all season, pretty much all year, we kind of talked about getting pressure, getting pass rush. This game, 6 sacks in this one. And across the board, Chris Jones, 15.5 sacks in the season. George Karlaftis, George the Animal, Steele, 6 sacks in the season. I believe 5.5 over the last 6 games, I believe.
6 in his last 7.
6 in his last 7. Or no, because they gave him a half a sack for the one today, even though that should have been a full sack. They gave him a half sack for that one. And then Mike Dana, 5 sacks on the year, including the 2 he had today. So, JD, we talked about pass rush, big deal going into the season. Is this the type of pass rush that you want from a team that you think can compete for a Super Bowl? I mean, last year we didn't have that. We talked about that being an issue. Some parts this year we talked about that being an issue, that creating the pressure. And it looks like this team is kind of coming together at the right time, as you always talk about. You want to come together at the right time at this point of the season. What do you make of the pass rush as we get into the playoffs?
Well, I think it's more than just a want. I think it's a need. You need a pass rush like this going into the playoffs. There's no question about it. I mean, what they did today, you're going to try to, emulate it as much as possible. You just have to. And so, especially against, the teams that we know we're going to see in the playoffs, you got to get some pressure on the, whether it be Joe Burrow or Josh Allen. You're going to have to get that pressure. And so that's very important.
He's busy. Tell him you're busy. You're on a show right now.
Hello.
It's Patrick Mahomes. You wanted to talk to JD. You want to get on?
Yeah. That's it, Pat. I get you back, right? Talking about you right now. But that I think you definitely need a pass rush like that. And look, I'm looking at this even in a way that I'm still wanting a little bit more from our defensive line. Okay, I think the rotation. I think they're still utilizing the rotation. How they're going to use different guys in combination. And so I look at some of the combinations don't quite work for me. And I'm looking like not necessarily getting any type of pressure on the defense, but Chris Jones with anybody else is going to hit me. It's going to be a win. I think it's going to be effective if you could just go ahead and get him loose. Frank Clark going out. I don't know if it's going to. It's going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little change with him going out, no doubt about it. Because I think he brings the element. Of course, maybe he doesn't necessarily show the sacks as coming up as it should be. But he gets pressure. He's very effective as far as, disrupting some of the passes and, the tackles that makes him frustrated. But, with that, man, I just want to say they played a phenomenal game. Chris, I think the most sacks as a defensive tackle this year. I mean, amazing. Absolutely amazing, man. He's just been an incredible player. To be defensive player of the year, no doubt about it. Let me please. It's not even a question. Seriously.
Well, let me answer the question, Marcus, first, and then I'll address JD's take on the Defensive Player of the Year with Chris Jones, because I think he has a more than valid case for it, and I can break that down in just a second. But let me say, when it comes to this pass rush, and if it's going to, the question is basically, do you think they're going to be enough to help the Chiefs get to a Super Bowl? I do think it is. I think it is. I definitely do. And the two biggest reasons why is because of the fact that this defense has numbers that I think are very underrated and overlooked, because if you look at the scoring amounts throughout the season, people are like, oh, Chiefs are giving up 23, 24 points a game as a defense, man. I don't know. Their secondary is really young. And then they overlook the fact that Chiefs had over 55 sacks this season. The fact that they're, fourth in the league in defensive and rush defense. The fact that they, even though they're horrible in turnover takeaway, that's mostly because the offense also turned the ball over 10 out of 11 games down the stretch. So that wasn't really on the defensive side's fault. And the Chiefs started forcing turnovers in this last month. I think they had 4. So this defensive line can get to the quarterback. They've been proving it. And I know that Spags is famous to mixing up those dialed-up blitzes, those timely blitzes with Justin Reed, who played incredible tonight, with L'Jarius Sneed, who's always incredible. I think he should be an all-pro this year. But Chris Jones is playing at his absolute best. This is the best version of Chris Jones we have ever seen. And I think it simplifies everything for guys like Mike Dana, who you talked about earlier, who has 5 sacks. In fact, I think 7 of his 9 career sacks have gone against AFC West teams. So this dude shows up when it matters the most. And I expect him to play well in the playoffs. But the 2 guys on the ends, Karlaftis and Dunlap, have been so pivotal. And I think it's awesome because we've talked about this before on the show. Those 2 guys are on complete opposite ends of their careers. Carlos Dunlap is a 33-year-old veteran that was just basically picked up. And then Karlaftis is his first-round 21, 22-year-old rookie that had expectations, but I think we all kind of knew it was going to take him some time, and that's exactly what happened. But both of these guys are playing such a key role. It's also making Chris Jones' job easy. So as much as Chris Jones takes the pressure off these guys, they're making his job easier, which is why he's having his best season in 5 years. So I am very confident, especially when you consider the fact the two biggest foes the Chiefs are going to have to face in the AFC playoffs are two teams that have banged up offensive lines, with the Bengals losing La'el Collins, an offensive line that already gives up a ton of sacks to begin with or without La'el Collins, and the Bills have a very banged up offensive line. Mitch Morse is in and out of the lineup. Deion Dawkins has leg injuries all the time. So yes, this defensive line can get to Josh Allen. They can get to Joe Burrow. It's just a matter if the Chiefs and their offense and defense can coincide in a game long enough to beat one of those two teams, because they didn't do it in their matchups this year. So that's the key to all this, man. Now, when it comes to Chris Jones, I 100% agree. I think this dude's a for sure all-pro. I think the Chiefs need to extend him because he doesn't look like he's slowing down. In fact, it looks like he's getting better. But when it comes to guys like Nick Bosa, the problem is he's going to have that narrative that, oh, well, the Niners didn't have a solidified quarterback all season. He led the league in sacks, led the league in quarterback pressures, led the league in quarterback hits, hurries, all that stuff, and he missed a game, and the only game he missed, they lost by double digits to the Atlanta Falcons at home. So the narrative's not going to be on Chris Jones' side. But make no mistake about it, Chris Jones has been just as good, if not better, than Nick Bosa this season. That's not being disrespectful to Nick Bosa. That's giving high praise to Chris Jones and what he means to this team as a whole. He's been an MVP on this team, man. He is the MVP of this defense, and he deserves every award that comes his way.
Well, not to mention, playing a defensive tackle is very hard to do. That's a tougher position to be in.
Yeah.
Defensive end. That's just the reality of it. So, defensive end, you have a lot more one-on-one situations. Chris is getting double teamed. He's getting through him. I mean, I'm talking about getting skinny. And he's just been doing a phenomenal job. Like you said, I mean, nothing against Bosa. Bosa's an incredible player. No doubt about it. But when you're getting double teamed time after time and still getting in there, I'm talking pressures, getting sacks, that is without a doubt a higher level of difficulty to do as opposed to playing a defensive end. So that's the reality of it as far as like when you look at it. Some people just look at overall sacks, but it's like, okay, wait a minute. What did this guy have to do to get those sacks in itself?
Yeah.
Talking about Karlaftis at 5.5 in his last 7 games, 6 on the season. We talk about being a rookie and how you kind of have to get used to it, right? And the fact that he's come on the last 7 games, is that a sign that the game is slowing down for him, JD, that he's understanding what's going on, or he's kind of just adjusted his game altogether to the NFL level? The fact that 5.5 in the last 7 games, that's trending in the right direction, right? I mean, talk to us about that kind of that adjustment period to get into being an NFL player, being a kind of a pass rush specialist in the modern day NFL. I mean, is that just adjusting at the right time, getting used to the game speed? What is that? Is the game slowing down for him?
Well, I think it's a number of things. Definitely the game is slowing down, but also too, he's learning a lot from Dunlap and Blake Clark, Chris Jones. He's learning a lot from these guys that's in front of him and around him too, as far as like, look, how do you get around to get sacks? Use your hands a little bit better. So he's getting a lot of toolage from those guys to help him out. And so that's a great position to be in as far as a rookie, having veteran guys that have done it before at a high level to help you out with it as well. So with him, I think because Karlaftis is like, okay, now I'm starting to get it. Now I can, kind of get my own self into these things and understand what I need to do. Because we said at the very first of the season, he was just this close. It was always just a little bit. He was almost there. And so then finally he started putting this thing together. And so it just takes time. It does. Especially for a rookie, it does take time. But also, too, when you're seeing a guy like Chris Jones who's getting, you're saying to yourself, I got to be able to get back there, too. You're being demanded of that every single game. I promise you, when they're sitting there saying, look, George, you have to get back there. GK, come on, man, where you at? We need to see you a little bit more. So he's constantly being amped up to go and get back there, go get sacks. And he's answering the call. He's been doing it the past 2 games. I actually had it projected. I know people were talking about how many sacks. I think I had it projected maybe with 8 this year.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Yeah, so he's just been back there, man. He probably could have had 8, man. He was just right there that close, man. But he's been doing a phenomenal job. And like you said, at the right time, when everything's starting to be put together, that he's starting to get it. Just watching these guys, the Chiefs both well being in that position, having a guy like that who's playing at a high level, like George.
Mm-hmm. JD's 100% correct, and how this all works out for guys like that. And JD knows better than Marcus and I because you've actually played in the league. And I know that JD would attest to this, that experience is the best way for you to develop your game. And I think that George has had an incredible situation to walk into in Kansas City because, as you just alluded to, having Chris Jones, Frank Clark, Carlos Dunlap, Mike Dana, experienced veterans like that around you to ease you into the situation while also saying, all right, man, young buck, it's time for you to step up. And he's done just that. That's why you see this. And plus, to George's defense, I mean, imagine walking into a season like this with all the pressure and expectation of being a first-round pick on the team that hosts the AFC Championship every single year, and your first month and some change, you're facing quarterbacks like Kyler Murray, who is insanely hard to catch, Justin Herbert's, who's one of the best talented quarterbacks we've seen in 20 years. I mean, you have just the list goes on of talent. Josh Allen by week 6. I mean, he's faced those 3 guys in just his first 6 weeks as a NFL starter. So that's a gauntlet to take on to start your career. And then, like I said, you see him start to really just take shape over this last 6-7 weeks. And I did it. I'm gonna post it on my Twitter probably tonight because I have the comparison waiting. Outside of Nick Bosa, I would say T.J. Watt's probably the best pass rusher in the game. And T.J. Watt's first season as an NFL player with the Steelers, man had 7 sacks. George Karlaftis has 6. So you're looking at a guy that could very well – I'm not saying he's going to turn into T.J. Watt because there isn't just T.J. Watts walking around. But when you look at the comparison, man, you're talking about a guy that has the potential to really start wreaking havoc in this league. And that would not shock me at all if this dude becomes one of the premier pass rushers in this league because he has that talent. I always thought he looked like a Ryan Kerrigan, the dude that played for Washington all those years. Yeah. Just a bull, just a guy that just bodies left tackles, right tackles, doesn't matter who he's going against, and just powers his way. And like you said, it always felt like for the first couple months, like he was just that close to getting a sack. That second season, that third season, and that fourth season, that little close, he's going to be there a whole second faster than what he was in his rookie year. So I couldn't be more excited, dude, because I walked in this season with pretty decent high expectations for Karlaftis. I had around the same that JD had, around 7 to 8 sacks. But the fact that he's just right there in a rookie season comparison to TJ Watt tells me everything I need to know, man. This guy, and ironically, they were both 30th overall picks in the draft. So there's some correlation and some parallels there to be paying attention to moving forward.
Well, let's hope that this plays out, that he becomes that. Well, I do know that we all know this, that TJ has a big brother named JJ that he's been watching for a long time. So whatever George has to do to get in that lab with somebody like that, he needs to do. I don't care what, this all season, you make sure, I don't care where you need to go. If you need to get on a mountain somewhere in the woods, okay, or cut some things up, go do that, okay? I don't know where it is. Somewhere, go find it, so.
Yeah,
but I know a lot of that competition with TJ and JJ. I want to be better than my bigger brother, right? Mm-hmm. The same thing with the Bosas. It's the same thing, right? I mean, shoot, Nick wants to be better than his Joey. So when you have that, they're at home. It's crazy because you almost look at it's like 2 brothers in the room and they're just doing pass rush techniques on each other. What was that one movie with Tommy Lee Jones and I can't think of Benicio del Toro?
Yeah. He's like a hitman. Yeah, I know exactly what
you're saying. They had a knife and I see him doing that. So it's good.
You're probably not far off, honestly. That probably really does happen.
Mm-hmm. And Lance, it's funny you say Kerrigan. So when I worked at the NBC local station, I had to cover Kerrigan with the Redskins. But also Purdue guy, also not the fastest guy, but a high energy, high motor guy. 7.5 sacks his first season with the Commanders. And if he has a career anything like Ryan Kerrigan ended up with 95.5 sacks in his 2011 to 2021
Sign me up.
Career.
Sign me up.
I'll take that.
Sign me up.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out the best clips from Chief Concerns. And if you prefer to listen to the show, subscribe and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.